Okay, let's start comparing and ordering rational numbers. Now, of course, anytime we talk about rational numbers, we need to know what we're talking about. So if I have the most basic numbers, 1, 2, 3, those are counting numbers. If I include 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, I have whole numbers. If I add negatives, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, those are called integers. But now we get out to this idea of rational numbers. Now, rational numbers are simply numbers that are created by division. So 4 is a counting number, a whole number, an integer, it's all those things. Negative 4 is not a counting number because it's negative. It's not a whole number because it's negative, but it is an integer. If I, on the other hand, take negative 4 and divide it by 6, now it doesn't fit in the counting, the whole, or the integers anymore, because if I'm to do my division, negative 4 divided by 6, negative 0.6 forever. That is now a decimal, and a repeating decimal at that. So we're out in this idea of rational numbers because it makes sense that we should be able to divide. It makes sense, it's rational. And so since we divided, it means that we have a decimal now. It doesn't fit in one of the other categories. Now, once we have that kind of thing, let's try to figure out how to put all these rationals in order. Now, if I have 0.72 and 0.73, it's easy to see that 0.72 is smaller than 0.73. Why? Because 72 is smaller than 73. So we would put the less than sign. You'll notice the small end goes towards the small number, the big end goes towards the big number. But it's not always quite so easy. 0.035, 0.04. Now in this case there's 3 whole numbers here. Here there's only 2. The way we compare decimals is we start at the same place. There's the decimal, there's the tenth spots. The tenth spots are exactly the same. So if those 2 spots are the same, I'm going to go to the next spot in each one. Well, 3 and 4. 4 is bigger than 3. So automatically, since it's bigger first over here, it's bigger always. Bigger first, bigger always. Now, I have this, 6.031 and 0.92. In this case, you say, well, wait a minute, 0 is way smaller than 9. And that's true, except that, wait a minute, 0.92 is less than 1. This is 6.031. It's a much bigger number because the number out front. So we start at the biggest number available and work our way down. So since this has nothing in the 1 spot, this has a 6, this is way bigger. So if we try to deal with decimals, 42.31, 39.97, it's obvious this is going to be bigger because 42 is bigger than 39. We don't really care what the decimal is because the whole number is much bigger. But what happens if we have fractions? What's bigger, 1/2 or 1/3? Well, a couple ways we could do this. One way would be find common denominators. What would be the common denominator between 2 and 3? Well, that's obviously 6. So let's multiply this by 3 and this by 2, and I come up with 3/6 compared to 2/6. And which one's obviously bigger? The 3/6, because once we find common denominators, if the bottoms are the same, then we only need to compare the tops. So in this case, 3/6 bigger than 2/6. But let's do it a different way. 1/2, 1/3. I could easily say 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. I could easily say 1 divided by 3 is 0.3 forever. Now if I convert them to decimals, it's very easy to see 0.5 is bigger than 0.3. So our biggest way to deal with them is change them to decimals. So 4 fifths and 7/8. Well, 4/5, let's grab our calculator. 4 divided by 5 is going to be 0.8. 7 divided by 8 is 0.875. So which one's bigger? Well, the 8's are the same. 0.8 would be like 0.80. This is 0.87. That's way bigger. Finally, the last thing we need to talk about with decimals and fractions is that decimals, percentages, and fractions are all the same. And they can move back and forth between each other. So if I have 0.13, that changes to 13%. But if I say 13%, how many cents are in a dollar? 100. How many years are in a century? 100. It's going to be 13 over 100. Now, but you say, well, wait a minute, how could I get to a decimal? Well, I could take 13 divide by 100, and it's going to be 0.13. So, to get from decimal to percent, we take the decimal and we move it 2 spots. To get from a percentage to a fraction, we simply take the number and put it over 100. And to go from a fraction all the way back to a decimal, we take the 13 and divide it by the 100. Using all those, you should be able to go from percentages to decimals to fractions and back again.